This is Sabina at Cross Keys Crafts. Today with a mechanism card that I saw on a YouTube channel that I follow. I'm not going to mention the lady's name because she's selling a die to create this mechanism. And if you've been following me for a while, you know that if I can recreate something without buying a mechanism die, then I'm going to try this. And this wasn't actually too difficult, but I have made a change where I think it's even easier to create this. This is called a triple slider glider card. I think this way around, or glider slider card. And what it is, it's a flat card, or fairly flat because I put some foam tabs on here. And you've got an arrow here, you've got pull tab, and when you pull it up, you've got these elements standing up, and this reveals the sentiment. And it looks complicated, but it's actually really easy to make, and I want to show you how. For this one here though, I cut the frame with my craft knife, and I decided that was a bit complicated, and also the way I built the mechanism was a bit of cutting with my craft knife, and I think it'll be so much easier if you have got a large rectangular die. It doesn't even have to be rectangular, because I show you in a moment how you work out your measurements according to the dies you have. If you don't have dies, you can cut these by hand, but as I said, I found this a little bit easier. So because I'm not quite sure how much storage space I've got on my phone, I thought I'd create a few things off camera. So, and what I've done so far is I've used the biggest of my rectangle dies, and I've cut this frame out of a piece of cardstock. This is just under 5 by 7 inches. Reason being is it goes on a, where is it, 5 by 7 card. Well, if you buy 5 by 7 cards from the shops, you will sometimes find they're not 5 by 7. So that's the first thing you need to do, is check that your piece actually fits on here. I've had mine so it fits perfectly. If you want to, you could have it smaller and have a frame around that. That's fine. Whilst I've got this on here, I will actually mark where I've already taken out a notch here with my little punch, because we need a notch in the first layer of this as well. So just marking that here before I forget that. Yeah, so this, I will just punch this out the first page, not on the back. You don't need on the back. So, and then this piece that I've cut out, rather than working with a die, which sometimes can be a bit deceptive as far as measurements are concerned, this is now my reference piece for the mechanism bits I need to cut. And this happens to be exactly 6 by 4 inches. And that makes it sort of easy. I will have a funny bit of a measurement, but that's fine. Because what you need to create from this, not from this piece of cardstock, because we need a longer one in a moment, but you need to work out from your piece of cardstock 3 exact panels here, and then you need a little piece at the bottom that will create this sort of fold here. Yeah, so but these 3 panels, they need to be the same size. So because mine is 6 inches, I can't have these 2 inches because I need to allow for a little flap. So I will create a piece. I've got some plain cardstock. So if this is 6 by 4, I will create a piece that that is a little bit longer at the top. The thing you need at the top actually shouldn't be more than this. So if this is sort of 3/8, I think it is, so I need to basically have this frame height on top of these 6 inches, but I don't allow that, sorry, I don't take that as part of my measurement. And then to allow a bit at the top, at the bottom here, I'm going to divide these pieces into 1 7/8 pieces, just under 2 inches, and that will give me, that will give me a little flap. And as I said, then I will have a piece on top. So my actual piece will be 6 inches, and I think this is 3/8. I'll tell you in a moment when I've checked with my scoreboard or my cutting machine, sorry, my guillotine. And then I will have to divide the 4 inches into 3s as well. Yeah, so I'm rubbish with inches, so it will be something like 1 and won't be 1.5, will be under that. What you can do is you're allowed to alter the measurements here, so you could have the middle piece a little bit wider, if that makes it easier. Yeah, but you need 3 panels here, but they are allowed to be different width. These here going across, they need to be the same width. Yeah, I hope I made this clear. So your die might have different measurements, but this is the important thing, to have a piece that is the same width as you have cut out from the frame, but a little bit longer at the top. Yeah, the height of your frame here, and then to allow a little pull tab. It doesn't matter how deep that is. I wouldn't have it too deep, but this flap here can be altered. It doesn't have to be that thin. Yeah, so I'm going to work this out for myself at the moment off camera, and then I'll tell you my exact measurements. I thought I might just as well show you how I measure these things. So I'm using this for reference, and I put it on here, and I actually, when I lay this down, I cut this a slither, really just a slither slimmer, because I think it will fit more nicely into the frame. And then I'm turning it this way, yeah, and I'm aligning my red cardstock here on the edge here, and then I'm just testing with a frame whether that is the width. Yeah, I can even lay it on here, so I need to move it over just a little bit. It can be a little bit slimmer than the frame, but not longer. Yeah, and then I know where to cut it, so I can take the top one off now. So no fancy measuring, just eyeballing it with a reference piece. Yeah, so, and I will also, yeah, so this is a little bit slimmer but a little bit higher, sorry, and I will also need to cut another piece that is slightly wider than this and much longer. I will actually leave it to a certain length. So I'm just checking the other piece I cut from the A4 cardstock, and I think again I will just cut a slither off, but you can really do with an edge like that. I hope you can see. Not sure what that is, probably 1/8, yeah, because that will sit behind the frame, but I don't want to take too much space away from the frame because we need to glue it down as well. And at the moment I think I will leave it at this length, because once I've assembled it all, I can still cut it down and decide the length of my pull tab. So I will now just do it on the back, score my piece at 6 inches, because that's the height I need, and this is the top and the frame bit. And I'm also, can put top on here, but I'm also marking the individual strips I'm going to cut so that I don't get confused. So I've got 1, 2, 3. So when I cut them apart and I piece them together again, I know that the pattern will match. If you have plain cardstock, you don't need to do that. So, and I can then mark at my 1 7/8. So what I do, no, am I doing this wrong? No, I have to start on this side by 1 7/8. So what I will actually do is put this down at 1 inches and then mark at 2 7/8. So the score line here marks that one, and this is 1 7/8. And then I'm moving, let me zoom in a little bit, moving this score line over to 3 inches, and I mark at 4 7/8. takes all the calculations out, and I'm moving this over to 5 inches and mark at 6 7/8. And then that gives me a lovely flap here at the bottom. Can you see? So this is how you figure it out, and they should, if I'm not mistaken, be all the same width. I'm going to check in a moment, but it should be fine. So I can then go ahead and fold and burnish these into both directions. So I think this is a 200 GSM cardstock. You don't want anything too flimsy but not too thick either. And then I'm going to work out how I'm going to cut these. I think I will just have no, I'll have to do it off camera. What I sometimes do if I need to work out measurements is to use a scrap piece of paper, the width of the cardstock I need, and then sort of work it out with my ruler. So I have decided to make the outer pieces 1 1/4, and that leaves me with the inner piece a little bit wider than 1 1/4, so I think it would look very even. If you use a trimming board where you've got, you know, the blade, you don't need to cut these all the way through. You can leave the bottom bit here untouched, but I'm not faffing around. I'm using my guillotine. I'm cutting it all the way through, and then afterwards I will use a strip of cardstock that will cover this again and glue these together again. That's not an issue, but you don't have to do that. The top ones we definitely need to cut apart, and this is why I said if you cut all the way through, have these numbered before you cut the piece of cardstock. You can now go ahead and sticking these down here on the pull tab so that the bottom matches the bottom of this pull tab here, and that you've got an even space on either side. Remember, we left it a little bit wider, so maybe put it down like this. Also make sure these are straight, so I think I will just start with the middle one, keep that in place, and put the glue on here and glue down the pull tab, and then I do the outer ones. Again, make sure you've got them in the right order so that you've got a continuous pattern here. I think it looks so much more pleasing to the eye. So I will quickly do that. And the important thing as well for mechanisms is to leave your glue to dry. You don't want to proceed too quickly. See, I've already shifted it a little bit, so make sure it's straight. So, and I've also cut a little strip of cardstock, here it is, that will then cut the bottom score line, sorry, the bottom cut lines here. I might have to cut that a little bit slimmer because you don't want it to obstruct that score line. So I quickly do this off camera and leave this to dry. Before I start assembling everything, I need to do one more thing, and that is to put a little notch in the middle tab here. So I'm aligning the frame around those pieces here, but at the bottom of this line here. So, and then I can see at the top where I need to put the notch, and I can have it a little bit deeper than that, but that's the minimum I need. And it's so much easier if I do this now than if I do it afterwards. So I've opened the bottom of my punch so I can see where I'm doing this. So I'm taking a generous notch out there. So you've got these attached to the bottom now, yeah, and now you decide which of these elements you want to pop up. I think it's nicer to have the middle one popping up in the front. You can see I could put something here and then have these in the back. So if you want the same thing, what you need to do is you glue these tabs here, just these two, down onto your pull tab. Oops, sorry about that. Butterfingers. And again, this is so much easier if you do this before you put the frame on. So again, I'm leaving that to dry for a few moments. So, and then I have to think now which order we need to do this in. We need to place the frame down, and we also need another strip. This is slightly shorter than the outer frame, and the way I've cut it, from the piece I've cut it, it happens to be, it goes the other way around the pattern, but I think it doesn't matter. And you slide this under these pieces but over the middle piece. Yeah, so you don't need the frame at the moment, so it's just to show you what it's there for. So, and you make it overlap evenly on either side. You can also cut it down later if you wanted to, and you stick this onto this piece here just above the score line. So you can put these out of the way, that makes it so much easier. Try not to have any glue oozing out on either side, because you don't want the mechanism to stick down. So I'm just eyeballing this and putting this next to the score line. And if I think I've got glue oozing out, I'm actually lifting this up to leave this to dry. By the way, when you place these strips down, make sure they are straight and they're not overlapping. You want these to move freely. Yeah, so I'm leaving this to dry for a moment, and I'll quickly remind myself how to attach the whole thing to the card. So we can now attach the frame, but all you need to do is put glue here on the tabs at the top. Make sure they lie flat and don't overlap. And we put a little bit of glue onto these tabs here. I hope I remember this correctly. So, and then we can place this down so that the whole mechanism sits nicely within this frame. Push it over a little bit, because I've cut these a little bit slimmer than 4 inches, so they hopefully won't catch on the sides. So, and this is all where I'm attaching them, so here and at the top. And I'm leaving that to dry again for a moment. So in the meantime, I'm getting my stamps out. I will be using the same ones again here. Oops. These are from an old magazine, and I just stamped these in red and green, and because the stamping was a bit rubbish, I put some clear embossing powder over them, and that always enhances the stamping. I've cut my notch out the front of the card here, and I can place this on here, and I can pull a little bit on this so I can see how far I'm pulling this up. So this is a little bit too much, actually. Just thinking it wants to pull it up a little bit, I think, but once the frame is glued down, it will be fine. And then I've got an idea how much space I've got for my sentiment. Oops, just flip back there. So you can mark this, yeah, so that you know where you can place your stamping. So I'm just putting very light pencil marks there. So because I can't find the other part of the stamp, I'm just stamping the snowflake kisses. I'm just putting it right in the middle. I do suggest that you don't add any embellishments like, you know, ephemera or whatever that can interfere with the mechanism. So I would just really just leave it to stamping. So I'm quickly off camera stamping this in red and putting my clear embossing powder on it, and then heat set this. Yeah, I will just quickly do this off camera. I had a bit of a brain fog moment and accidentally used my Lavinia Elements to stamp, which never gives a good result, but I did heat emboss it, so it wasn't too bad. But then I thought, to take away from the focus, I'm going to stamp a little bit around that. But again, I didn't stamp properly, so to take away focus from that, I'm just going in with the same colour, and I'm just doing a little bit of ink blending there. I don't want to add too much blue really, because the colour scheme is a slightly different, but I think it will be okay. So, and I can focus just in the middle area here. I deliberately stamped in an area that will be hidden later. Just wanted to off stamp a little bit. So, and that will take the focus away from the fact that I haven't stamped this snowflake properly. So I think that's fine here. So not great, but it'll do. So, and I'm just also using a little bit of kitchen towel to just go over the embossing powder to take any excess off if I have got anything there. So all that's left to do now is to attach the frame. Obviously there's more to do than that because we still need to embellish the card. But for the mechanism, that's everything. So I'm using some red tape. I've turned my card over and I'm putting red tape across all the way around here. So you want a tape that is not too wide. You want to make sure it does not touch this pull-up panel, because if it does, you're risking that it will stick down. So use a thinner one. You can use wet glue, but you risk that the wet glue oozes and then will stick the mechanism down. So I've gone a bit off here, but I can cut that off afterwards. So, and by using red tape, you know this is not coming apart because it's a very sticky tape. So cutting this overhang off a little bit, just a teeny bit. So, and then I'll be using my tweezers to peel these off. So, and obviously with red tape there is no wiggle room. So I'm going to place my card, and I think I'll do it sideways. And I'm opening up the card. I think it's less likely to bounce, although it's obviously a little bit from the heat embossing, it's a little bit warped. So, and then starting at the bottom, I will pull it a little bit closer to me, even if I go off camera, just to make sure I've got my nose above it. And then I'm placing it down, placing down the frame, making sure it sits flat. Very exciting, but I think I got it. Even if you're a wee bit out, it doesn't matter. So just check though that this pulls nicely now. Yeah. Sam Calcott, when she does mechanism, she pulls a little bit of wax on the side, but I think this works okay. So I can now see how much overhang I have. What I didn't say before is you obviously have got a card that is a wee bit longer than your 5x7. I forgot that. I forgot to mention that. So, but it doesn't matter. I might create a separate envelope, or I've got 8-inch envelopes anyway. So I will cut this off now here, and I will use my corner rounder on it, and then I can start the decorating. Obviously you have to pull this out to use your corner rounder, so don't be surprised if you can't put the punch on whilst you've got this. So all I need to do now is put decorations on, and I'm just showing you the original card again. Where is it? Here. So the important thing is, so you can put embellishments on these panels here. I could also put something there, but I didn't bother. And you can have something wider on the front, like I've got the train here, and I've even put that on foam pads. But on these panels here, these must not overlap on this side, on the inside, because then they would interfere with this mechanism. They wouldn't. Can you see how they would then interfere here? So I'm going to do this off camera now, the decorating. I have chopped some of my elements down. I just want to show you that. I've got the same train, but this one's bigger, and it had another carriage here. I just chopped it down, chopped it off. I can use it somewhere else. And with these also, I've cut the houses down, but you can hardly see that. So have a little play with the stuff you've got. Also, I put some embellishments here on the front, but just on the frame, mainly because I didn't cut the frame nicely there. So you can do that as well at the bottom, but only glue it onto the frame. Don't glue it onto this bit, because we need to be able to move that. Yeah, so I'm going to do this off camera. Or the other thing I did was add some stickles for snow, and I also used red stickles to put the arrow at the top. So once I've done this, I'm going to show you the second version, and then my card will be finished. One more thing I need to mention is, obviously, when you stick a white thing down like this, only put glue in the area that actually covers this panel here. You don't want any glue on the side. My card is finished. I have added some stickers and they have dried nicely. Don't know if the camera picks up that shine. And I can open it up like this, and the elements stand up really nicely. Because this element here, the train, is wider than on this card here, I haven't added anything on the panels here behind. I've chopped the gingerbread man in half and just stuck him into that carriage there. I thought that looked really cute. And as before, I have cut elements down in size. Here I cut a sign off and something else on the other side. There was also like a chimney which I cut off because I thought it would bend anyway. And yeah, I'm really pleased with this. Just a few things I'd like to point out. Because I've got a thicker panel here, because I put the extra strip on, I had to lift this element up a little bit. I just put some cardstock underneath so that when the recipient folds this back, it doesn't get caught underneath. With this one here, I didn't have the problem because this was thinner here on the front. Then where I had the slightly rubbish stamping, I actually put some of the Lavinia snowflake stickers on. So one here and one there, and they are flat enough so they won't get caught in the mechanism, so I think that's okay. Yeah, do I need to mention anything else? No, I tell you what I do need to mention is that the embellishments are from this older pad. I've used that a few times now. This is from Deco Time. I bought that last year in Germany, and it had the lovely gingerbread elements there. And I had a session recently behind the bar where I took them all out of the pads and cut all the little bits off, you know, the ones that keep them in place on the pages. So yeah, I really enjoyed creating these. Yeah, and I think they are good fun, something different for the recipient and not too difficult to make really. So I prefer my second version. As far as the mechanism is concerned, I do prefer the bolder colours though on this one here. That's a different cardstock. That's from, I think, either the Works. Yeah, it probably is from the Works. And these colours are a little bit bolder, but both I think are nice. Yeah, and if you think so too, please give me a thumbs up, and I'd be happy if you subscribed to my channel and commented on this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.